what we did was we went to getbootstrap.com, and I had you guys download Bootstrap. Lots of sites use Bootstrap, and even a lot of, like, you can put a content manager behind it so that, like, you could turn it into a theme on WordPress or some other kind of content manager. All we did was we downloaded it, we saved it, and then I had you guys unzip it and rename whatever you downloaded. Let's see, I don't know why it's where it is. I unzip it, and now it's in this folder. So I renamed the folder, and this is going to be whatever your site is, whatever your hobby or organization is. It should be a hobby or organization that doesn't already have a website, because we're building it from the ground up. And I'm just going to call it SJMC if I wanted to make a new website for the School of Journalism and Mass Communication. Then I'm going to go ahead and just drag it to the desktop. So now I've got everything that I downloaded is in that folder, SJMC. And what I downloaded was the CSS file that has lots of different files in it. The one we're going to use is bootstrap.css. We also have fonts and JavaScript. Now, today we're going to work on building your site and starting with some content. We're also going to create a new style sheet that, instead of having to pile through the 5,000 lines of code if you want to change your link colors or something, we're going to build our own little style sheet. It's a customized style sheet that is all customized to you. It's going to override their style sheet in terms of color. Anything that's on that one will override the default settings. Okay, so you won't have to filter through all those lines of code. But step one, what we did was we went to Text Wrangler, and we started a new file. Go ahead and delete these. And I just had you guys code what was on this page. It was pretty easy because all you had to do was just literally copy and paste it on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one that I've already got. I'm going to go to Dropbox.com and access the folder. Because a lot of this really is just do what's on the sheet, but I want you to obviously understand what's on there as well. All right, go to a folder called SJMC, one that I've already been working on. Where it is. Should have done this before, sorry. All right, how do you download a folder? I've done this before somewhere. You guys use Dropbox?
Right click on it, probably.
Here's what I'll do.
What are you trying to
Download all this stuff. You know what? I'm just going to download
like
this.
each one?
Right.
Unless it's in
Boom, there we go. I've already done download. All right. I don't need you guys. I'm just kidding. I do. Downloads. Here it is. Okay. Copy. Now I'm going to go to my desktop, SJMC, and paste it in there. Now this is just an index file I was already working on before, just so I don't have to go through the whole process of typing things up here. View, text display. I'm going to show my fonts a little bit larger. Okay. So what you see up here is basically from here, you guys did this, you did the doc type, you did the first few lines of code, and then you did a body, and you basically ended it here. And I'm going to go ahead and end it here just so you can see. Close the div, and then closed the body, and then close HTML. Okay, so you'll see the first thing that I've done, this is just the basic outline of what you've done already. You've got your head, and in the head you've got a title, and you're linking to the style sheet, and then you have this line of code, and what that does, a lot of you maybe didn't get to this point yet, but you will in the next step. It's literally just the next thing on the sheet. It's telling the browser to look at your screen to allow mobile devices to look at it. Instead of going to a website and everything just basically the same website just scaled down, now it lets you like do double taps and lets you zoom in, and it lets it, basically the browser read it as a mobile style sheet. That's why I think some of you, when you tried your responsive site and tried to look at it on your phone, it wasn't being responsive. Because this one line of code needs to tell the browser, oh yeah, and if it's a mobile device, let it be a mobile device. Do different things to it. So that's what that one line of code, and that's obviously the backbone of responsive design, is that it's going to respond to the different sizes. So you need this line of code, and that's the next thing you're going to do on that list. What I had you guys do, though, is call up the style sheet, and in the body, call up a class called div class container, and then add an h1 that says hello world. Close that. And then you close the div, and then you close the body, and then you close the HTML. I'm going to go ahead and get all this stuff out of here. Save it. And you know it's working when it's in Helvetica font. And as you change the size of the browser, it moves around. When you guys first did your first sites, it was Times New Roman, and it would not jump around like this. It's already trying to be responsive. So you know you're on the right path when that happens. And that's really page one. That's all we did. Now, from here, obviously you're going to want more than just hello world. But you can start to see that we're going to use a few different things here. First of all, use tabs. I can't stress that enough. Tab your divs over. Because when you're going to be working with, everyone's going to have a different site. You're all going to be working with different types of divs and totally different layouts. So the only way to make sure that you close this div was to make sure that it's easy to be found. Another thing you could do is that you have these little triangles, and it lets you kind of tuck in that div. So you can see that Text Wrangler is great in that, oh, there's stuff in here. At least you can see that you open and close the div, right? To get inside there, you could double click, or you could click this little arrow. If I wanted to tuck in everything in my body, I could do that. Everything in my head, I can do that. And it makes your code seem less crazy, okay? So make sure that you're using these tabs so that it can find those, it can kind of tuck it in without ruining anything. The other thing is that this div class container, we're going to use that a lot. It's basically a catch-all div. If you want to have something together in a column, instead of making a column, you're just going to put it in a container. Now we will work with columns and rows, and it's kind of, I shouldn't say column, but think of something if you wanted an image to be with a caption. If you want to kind of group things together, you're going to put it in a container div. And so the reason I put this in a container div is so that you can see that when I do that, it basically added padding. There's a little bit of padding there, and there's a little bit of padding on the top. That's automatically adding padding to whatever I'm doing. Okay, so we're going to use the container div a lot. Now, it's up to you how you want your site to look. One reason I wanted you guys to write your blog posts on one site that you liked was that so you can kind of see, do I want a banner on the top? Do I want a navigation to come next? Then do I want my stuff in the middle? Or do I want to have my navigation on top first and then a banner, a sliding, rotating image or something like that? Think about how you want this to look, because it really is a create your own adventure. I'm going to create it one way, and you're more than welcome, and I would probably recommend, if you're kind of scared with this, to go the way that I'm going. But all that being said, don't worry about deviating from that, because you don't have to call things up in a certain order like you did for the last project. So obviously the first thing that we're going to want is a navigation. And the way that we're going to do that is we're not going to put it in a container, because it kind of is treated as its own container. Now, one thing that I do have to make mention of is that some items in this are going to be HTML5, which means the newest version of HTML5 says instead of doing a div ID equals header, which would work, the new iteration of HTML says, well, every site's going to have a header, so we're just going to make it its own tag. Okay, so it's going to open a header tag and then close a header tag. Okay, and newer browsers will understand that, and you're probably going to maybe see that more and more often. But anyway, so we're not doing a div ID equals nav for this. The way that that Bootstrap does it is it just treats it as a list first. So I'm going to say, just like we did for the other site, home. That's going to be your first page, obviously, and that's going to be in a link. href equals index.html, home, and then I'm going to close that. I don't want it to open in a new window. It's just going to be a link, and then I'm going to go ahead and close it. And notice that I'm using this structure, right? I don't want to, and really, I could tab that in even farther. Okay, so that's not going to be much of a list, but I'm going to save it so we can at least see it. Okay, that's a list, right? Now to turn it into a navigation, we're going to give it a class. And we've used classes a little bit. You can see that the container div is a class because we can use that again and again. We're not going to use IDs anymore. Once in a while we might. But this is going to have the class of nav. It's going to be a navigation. So now it's going to convert that list into a navigation. So what did it just do? Took away the bullet point. And now when I hover over it, I'm not just hovering over the word, it turns it into a whole line. Okay? So that looks kind of like, I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste it. Actually, I'm not going to lose what's on my clipboard because I want to keep that. I'm going to copy that. I'm actually going to grab all this stuff down here so I don't lose it. If this was my list, it's now going to look pretty much like a list, but I don't know if you can't really detect that like hover, but it does kind of look like, right, when you had a small screen, that's what we had to do, right? It turned it into kind of a responsive list. Now, you could leave it like that, but I don't recommend it because not every site is going to look at it, that thin. You don't want a navigation that looks like that necessarily. But you can add another class to it, and I'm going to call it nav-tabs. And what that's going to do is it's going to turn that navigation list into a bunch of tabs now. And I don't have my home on there, which is too bad. Obviously, we're all going to have index pages, and we're going to create, index.html, thank you, home. This site is going to have 5 pages, okay? So your other one had 4, this is going to have 5. If I wanted this particular list item to have a special little thing, making sure that I know that I'm on that page, you could add another class called active. And that's pretty general with almost any site that if you jump into a site, active means it's the site the page that you're on. And now you can see that it added this little, number 1, it's not a link anymore. Number 2, it's got this kind of circle around it, the tab around it. So all I did was add a class, active. And I could add that class to any one of these list items, and it would do the same. So if this was my About page, I would have to add that class to that list item. Now that's not required, and it's not on the sheet actually either, but I'll leave it up here if you want to experiment with that. So you could also do, instead of a nav tabs, you could do nav pills. So it looks a little bit different. Okay, it looks like buttons instead of tabs. Now those are the only two real options you have with Twitter Bootstrap, but that's basically how you would create a navigation. Okay, so what I'm going to do is let you guys open up your sites, and that is basically the page. That'll get you to the end of page 2 on the handout. Open up your sites, open up Text Wrangler, make sure that you, basically we're getting again to the bottom of page 2. You're building your navigation, think about the pages that you're going to put on this, and I have an extra sheet up here if you need it.